what? You can swear because we swear here in the spoiler room. And yes, folks, once again, we are here with some wonderful, talented indie filmmakers and editors. We have a familiar name here with us. First, B.A. Lewandowski is with us again. How you doing, sir?
How you doing?
Great to have you. And a new face here. His film, well, their film, I should say, Gothic Slayers, is a fun indie film out now on Amazon Prime. We welcome Caleb Harris. How you doing, Caleb?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Oh, so glad to have you both here. Always fun to talk films. And I just finished watching this one. I rented it and I watched it because I like supporting. And Gothic Slayers is a lot of fun. A lot of fun. I went into it cold too. I just saw the poster. I was like, read up of the summary a little bit, but I didn't even watch the trailer. I was just like, okay, I'm going to go into this cold. And I went in and I was like, oh man, this is a lot of fun. So I guess, Caleb, how did you come across this? Because the script writers are also our two stars, Ben and Dylan. So how'd you get involved in this?
So it's a crazy story and it's kind of one of my favorite kind of amalgamations of just like how the industry kind of works in general and just like how small and crazy the world is. I'm originally from Des Moines, Iowa before I moved out to California and really started like working in the industry. I started as an actor out there and I was cast in a television show from LA that was shooting out there and it was called Play by Play. And I worked on the camera team, and then I also did some like on-screen stuff, little day playing action. And on that project, I met someone named Ben Getz, who is the writer and one of the main characters of this film. And we hit it off. We had some conversations on set, goofed off a little bit together. But then we really didn't keep in contact very much. And 7 or 8 years had gone by, and in this time. I had moved out to LA. I had been producing stuff. I'd been directing some music videos and some small things. And he had just kept up with me on Instagram, and just saw what I was doing. And so, kind of just out of the blue, one day, I just got a message from him and said, "Hey, my friend and I, my best friend, wrote this script. We've been seeing that you've been doing a lot of directing. Would you like to take a look at the script and see if you like it?" And, the rest is kind of history from there. And, since then, those guys have just become like some of my best friends. I've spent the last like 3.5 years working like very, very closely with them. And so it's just this beautiful experience of like, you never really know when you meet someone like on set or just when you're walking down the street, you never know how those people might impact your lives, later on down the road. So, it was just this beautiful kind of crazy, out of nowhere experience. And then here we are with this film and it was my first directorial debut and and now everything just feels real.
And
It
and,
feels
and now
like,
now it's out into the world for the
yeah.
wonderful internet to consume and do other things with it probably because it's the internet, right? So
Yes, and thank you for renting it, by the way. My
oh
overseas
yeah.
credit cards are going to be very excited about that. The payments are, I'm underwater, so this is going to be great for me.
Well, I like to support where I can, absolutely. And but BA, how'd you get hooked up with this gentleman and into this interesting project?
One of the producers of the movie, Jason Bernard, I had worked with him in the Chicagoland area on a project, and we stayed. Actually, we didn't really stay in contact. Jason just knew I was. I don't know why Jason called me. I guess because I'm reliable, I suppose. He goes, you know what? I'm involved in this movie. I think you and the director would get along, which is true. Me and Caleb got along really well. And he set up a meeting, and then it was a great meeting. Caleb's like, all right, this guy's probably nuts, but I can work with that.
We were all a little crazy on the
Yeah.
project. It's a
And we've
beautiful
got
part.
similar tastes, so
Well, indie filmmaking does get crazy. I mean, it literally does. And if you could, Caleb, I always love doing this. You're the director. Could you give a little synopsis in your words what Gothic Slayers is about to my listeners?
Yes. So Gothic Slayers is the story of two best friends who work at a mini golf course, who stumble upon an ancient cult that has this evil plan to summon a demon from another dimension, that is going to destroy the town. So it's up to these two, let's call them Yahoos, to band together and stop the cult before they destroy the town. That's kind of my surface level,
Sure.
explanation that I love to give to people about the film. But really, at its heart and its core, I think Gothic Slayers is really a story of, friendship and, and kind of accepting, growing up and what it means to kind of move forward with your life in a positive way. So, it's very much a coming of age
Hmm.
story of these two friends who are put in this extreme situation and kind of how they deal with it. So we got a lot of laughs, we got a lot of thrills and some fun, different, styles of filmmaking kind of through the process. But yeah, I guess that would be the way I would describe it.
And now, what was your approach to, or what? Well, I guess it was their approach, but the thinking of making it retro because I was trying to kind of place it like, okay, you've got the video game cutscenes, which were wonderful, by the way. I loved the video game bits. Those had to be kind of fun to edit, huh? But what made you want to kind of set it in that period? Because I'm guessing, because they do use a laptop with Moogle for the search. So we're looking at 90s, late 80s. It was a little hard to piece together the period, though I was happy no cell phone in sight. So, uh,
Yes, that was, I mean, I think the ultimate goal from even the script when we were that early in the development process was we wanted it to feel as timeless as possible. We didn't
sure,
want it to feel like it was a specific moment in time, but I know the hardest thing that like modern filmmakers really have to work around is the cell phone issue of like, especially like horror or comedy or, anything like that. So we kind of decided to lean into, and we did some like very modest rewrites to the script that kind of like removed any kind of references to like modern movies or things that were happening in the world to keep it a little bit more ambiguous so we could kind of work around that without directly identifying it.
sure.
And the funny thing about the 8-bit animation sequences that we have in the film is that none of those are actually scripted from the
Really?
original development. Yeah, those and it's one of my like proudest like parts of the process that we did. Those strictly came from like we had budgetary issues, we had production issues. It rained on us like our first 3 days out there in Maryland when we shot, and it rained out like half of our cornfield scene that we were supposed to have. And so we, indie budget, we got no money, and we were kind of like, okay, but how are we going to get around these things? And like from that like extreme level of stress and everything just going wrong, and me crying every day about how what a huge mistake I had made. The
Oh,
project,
sounds like true indie filmmaking right there.
right?
Yeah,
We landed on this idea of like, the boys use this video game, and this was always in the script, that they kind of
sure.
use the game to justify kind of what's happening in the world. It's kind of their like center piece that kind of keeps them like, oh, in the video game they do this, so we should probably do something like this. And so it kind of came to us that like, oh, it would be fun to kind of go with this mixed media kind of format for the storytelling where like these kids are so, they're so out of their mind that they just kind of they pretend they're physically in the game. So that's my artist way of justifying why we had to go through it instead of doing all these reshoots and traveling everyone out again and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's the beautiful part of filmmaking, right? Is like you're given a huge obstacle with seemingly no right answer in sight, and you make the best decision that you can. And now, personally, it's my favorite part of the film. It's what I grew up with. I'm a huge video game fan, so for me to be able to, put even more of myself on the screen was like super rewarding. And our animation artist was just so stunning. His name's Ruwan, and we found him on Instagram. Just an amazingly talented artist, and really just went above and beyond for us on the project. So yeah, we're
And
so thankful for him.
I imagine he also was the one that did the art for the Gothic Slayers 4 stand up. the video game. Did he do that artwork as well then, or
Yep, yep. Everything that we superimposed in the game itself too was all
yeah?
done with him. And it was great because he was a huge video game nerd too, obviously, because he does pixel art. But I was able to send him just these references. Like I was like, oh, I want it to feel like Castlevania, like the old SNES,
That's
Castlevania.
exactly what clicked in
Yeah,
my head. I'm watching it going, oh, we got Castlevania fans here.
that's right. And he picked up on it immediately, and he created these backgrounds and these worlds. And even through it too, he was based in Brazil,
Mm.
so he mostly spoke Portuguese. So there was
Oh,
also like a translation element to me going to him in English, him having to translate it, translate
right.
Portuguese back to English. And even through those mistranslations, some of them that happened, still just, beautiful things came from it. So it's just, yeah, I love that piece of the film, and it was so much fun to be able to do it. Total accident though.
It, well, and that's great. And I kind of figured when I was watching it, I'm like, oh, they're doing some of these segments because of budgetary, and it still works because it gives it that identity. Plus, the best controllers for any stand-up game I've ever seen, a steak and a whip of garlic. So
Yeah, really early motion control. We had them on the Wii by like, 20 some years. Yeah.
now, BA, I, it's not just the look of this film that felt retro. It was the editing and piecing it together, especially the opening of this felt so like something from an 80s comedy. How did you capture that? I mean, did you reference your childhood movies, or how do you capture that, and what kind of signifies an 80s edit if people don't realize what I'm referring to?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. The the split screen was supposed to be indicative of
Right.
editing schemes that they just don't utilize anymore. But I think when Caleb and I first started, Caleb's got a music video background, and technically so do I. But I don't think I've worked on a music video honestly since Clinton was president. But that was one of the first things we discussed is let's try to do 80s, even though, like Caleb said, the movie is generally timeless.
Right.
But the nice thing about working with Caleb is he was good at hindering my instinct for chaos, because if it would have been left up to me, there would have been there would have been a lot more nonsense. But
Sure.
that is where that came. Here's the fun thing about that sequence. The music that's in that sequence is, I don't know if you picked up on this, Mark, but Matt Corbett, who does the music for SITC,
Mm.
his music is the opening titles for Gothic Slayers. Did you
Oh,
pick?
okay.
Yeah. And we had another piece of music in there that was, Caleb, what is,
It was super copyrighted. I know that. We
dude, there was no way to get it. It was, hold on. It's the Italian nonsense song. Hold on.
Oh, yeah, I know. Okay, yeah.
You know what I'm talking
Yeah, I
about?
know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Uh, watch this. Watch this. This is going to be fun. I'm going to go into YouTube and put in Italian nonsense song and watch this. There it is. Okay. Adriano Celentano, Prison Colanascanal Cuso. I'm
Yes.
getting that right. But I saw episode or season,
it was
is it
Fargo,
season three?
right?
Season three of Fargo, where they go to play Contract Bridge, the scene with
Oh.
Ewan McGregor, and that song plays. And
Ah.
literally that song dictated the edit of that opening. But we couldn't use it for, obviously it's a
Yeah.
race issue, but the song that goes in there is
Oh, it was
magic.
yeah, it
Yeah.
worked really well. I mean,
It
all the way
worked. Yeah,
from
it worked spectacularly well.
no, I
Caleb,
don't
you guys tried to match that for a while, right? We tried to get a piece of music that was similar to that original song, right? And it just
Yeah, yeah, we played around.
impossible.
Yeah, we played around with that for a little while, but it just didn't have like the same kind of finesse. And it's funny, Ben's being very modest, and he's being very generous with the level of like control that I like kind of came in with that. But it was what was great about what Ben did, especially with that opening sequence, because that was one of the first things that we actually edited. That actually
Yeah.
cooked in a lot of the identity of the film, and that
Mhm.
actually came from from Ben because I pretty much told him that I just wanted it cut together in an exciting montage that did feel flashy and poppy, kind of like a music video. And even from that initial edit, Ben put in those like really kind of silly sound effects that were in there, which
I
wasn't
love those. Yeah.
yeah, and it was brilliant. It wasn't in my original vision for the film, but when I saw like the sequence put together with that, I was like, oh, this totally fits. Like this totally makes sense. And we kind of held on to that and carried that through in the entire film. And again, just another great like piece of the film that I really love that makes it feel different than like what we see now,
Yeah.
old
Yeah.
like,
Oh
Adam
yeah.
West Batman silly sound effects, but in like a very real kind of situation. So yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that opening sequence because it was the first thing that we really worked on. And yeah, like Ben said, we battled forever trying to find the right piece of music for it. And then when we landed on Matt's song, I was just like I was so enthralled with that score. I was like, I gotta have that in my movie. I will do anything. Please just give me that score.
The editing of that sequence too was hyper specific, hitting, I don't know, 160 different beats in that original track. And that's how good Matt's music is. You can't even really tell.
Right.
I'm not cutting to Matt's music at all. I'm cutting to a
Mhm.
completely different track, and you
Sure.
Yeah.
can't tell. The
No, you
best moment of
couldn't.
that sequence is when we go triple screen
Hmm.
and Ben goes like this, and it goes ding. I lost it. I lost it in the theater when we were in LA, Caleb, when that comes up. Oh man, that part is funny.
The opening set the whole tone for at least our two characters, Ben and Dylan. I mean, you immediately get it reminded me in the spirit of Night at the Roxbury with our two buddies
Yeah,
who are
yeah.
in the car and they're in groove and then they're in sync with each other. Dylan and Ben really reminded me of those two in the opening of this. And I think it really did help set the tone and let some people know because I think sometimes when you get a film like this, people aren't quite sure how they're supposed to take it or what they're going to be in for. And you're opening here all the way up to where, and they weren't driving that fast. Even if they would have hit the kid, I mean, it probably wouldn't have been injured, but at least not to waste their beverage. But you up until that point, you get the idea of exactly not only what type of film you're in for, but what characters Dylan and Ben are, which are friends. I mean, all of us, especially us guys who have our best friends or whatnot. If you've got a best friend who is a guy, everything with them, you could tell these two are friends. And I imagine it helps because they are friends, so they wrote it so they could, and sometimes you can lay into each other even more probably because they're so familiar with each other, right? You didn't even
Yeah.
have to direct that. You're just like, okay, you two are angry at each other. Go. And
Well, it was great because like even for like that scene in particular, when we showed up at that gas station to shoot that sequence, in the script we had like a lot of other stuff that was like written in there,
sure.
and it was stuff that we weren't able to actually do because it was actually a live gas station, like there were
Oh
customers
yeah.
out and stuff like that. So it was kind of fun where it's like I kind of when we went there and the lighting team setting up, cameras getting ready. I just kind of took Ben and Dylan through and I was just like, hey, let's just walk through this and like let's look at what's around here and like what can you guys just play with? I'm just gonna watch you and so they're walking around, they see the toilet paper, they start tossing it at each other, they grab the drinks, which was scripted, but then we just have this whole like kind of fun sequence and a lot of the direction that I tried to take in that, especially with like our core cast, Ben Dillon,
Mm.
and then Sam and Chloe and Jenny, was to kind of just keep that level of kind of fun going. So there was a lot of like improvisation. Typically, the last take would just be for the actors to do anything that they wanted to do. And I found that like those were always, for the most part, Ben, I think those were the takes that we used, a majority of the time were like those
Oh yeah.
final takes when they were just living in the moment.
And we would find gems towards the end sometimes too. Remember that shot with Piper when she hits the doorway?
Yeah.
And I
Pipe.
previously used another take, remember? And then we're like, wait a minute, let's go back and look at one more. And I think I said that one's a little over the top, and I think you said something like, "Don't you remember what movie we're working on or something?" It's all exaggerated. Great. That's the thing, man. You got to study your takes. You got to study them all.
it was great, and Piper, who plays Jenny in the
Mhm.
film, I think is like working with her is like one of my most like as a director is one of my like proudest experiences, just interacting with her because it was like her first film that she had really worked on, and she, I had known this unbeknownst to me at the time. She was feeling very, kind of like imposter syndrome, kind
Oh,
of like
sure.
not super comfortable
Hmm.
kind of in the moment. And it was those, like, she was always in her head up until those final takes when I would tell her, I'm like, hey, give me the Piper take. Like, don't give me the Jenny take necessarily, the Piper take. Because Piper's got a lot of sass. If
Yeah.
Piper could throw it, down, and it's really, really funny. That's why we cast her, because we just felt that energy coming off of her casting tape. And it was nice because they just came to my wedding recently, and we've been talking about the project and stuff, and she says that even to this day she's gone on to do like a lot of really great things, working on
Sure.
tons of projects, but she holds on to that like the last take is for me, I'm gonna give him the Piper take.
Right.
Kind of incorporates that in her acting process, which is just makes me feel awesome because to like kind of have to be able to help shape another person's career, and hopefully in a positive way and not in a,
Mhm.
not in a negative way. But that's what I'm always hoping for. But yeah, those last for fun takes always led to something really good.
And it's awesome that you allowed that freedom because you do hear sometimes of directors who are like, stick to the script. This is what's written. This is what we will do. You know, that kind of limits the actors. But you had a variety of, I mean, you mentioned Piper. This is her first major feature film, but you had some very familiar faces in here as well. Maggie, played by Melanie Rosedale, she was in a film I saw a while back, Sleepwalk Kill. She was
Oh,
fantastic in
mhm.
Sleepwalk Kill. She plays a very dark character in there, but she was fantastic. I remembered her role in here. And then yeah, Fiona, was it Dominic Dominica?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I have speech impediment, but of some sort, but or just prevalent names. But recognized her because she was not only in High on the Hog, which I've talked to Ben about, but she was also in Gags, a Wisconsin film.
Okay.
Hey, represent. So I recognized her, and then even Jason Bernard, who plays Eugene and the Cult Father. I was like, where did I see him? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I watched Cholo Zombies Monstro a while back, and he was in that. So it was fun watching you having these younger, folks who haven't had much experience. I mean, even Ben and Dylan really didn't have that. Your two leads, which had to be a bit of a challenge. No offense to them at all, but they had to be a little bit of a challenge directing, along with those veterans. Did they mix together well? Did they kind of feed off each other and help each other out?
Yeah, totally. And I think that was what was cool just about the environment on set too, is like everybody was so hands-on in so many
Mhm.
different ways. Because both Ben and Dylan also were kind of assisting in production,
Sure.
as well. So everyone's brain is kind of like split in a lot of different directions. And so yeah, I mean, and even Fiona was helping with craft services and stuff like that, helping make sure the crew were like fed and everything. So it
Sure.
was it was beautiful watching everyone, pick up a stand when they need to, help carry things, when they needed to be moved. But then while we were like in the moment and on set, everyone feeling very open to collaborating, and I always have that open door policy where it's like I want to hear ideas. I want to like, hear what everyone has to say if we need to go another take or and they would typically lead to, late night conversations too, where we'd all come over and drink, after set and talk about what we might do the next day and all the different ideas. But no, everyone got along really well. I think the young talent that we had in the film, I think they really held their own.
They did,
uh,
yeah.
and really did a great job. And like the experienced cast, while they don't have quite as much screen time as everyone else, I think they made every scene their own. And then in between, we're there to help and give advice and kind of like express their creative experience in the process. So it was great. It was really a melting pot of like a lot of people with different strengths and weaknesses and all just coming together. And I as a director, my thing, and I always tell this to other directors, I'm like, you should listen to everybody's idea and you should hear everybody out. And if someone has an idea, like you were saying, for like I'm gonna do another one off the script. Let them do it because if it's brilliant and genius, you're gonna get the credit for it. So well, you might
There
as
you
well
go.
just see what they
Yeah.
have to say, you know.
Might as
So
well. Yep, yep.
Might as well go with it. Yeah.
Might as well go with it.
And how did you assemble this cast then? Because, like I said, with the new and older, did you get recommendations? I mean, there are some connections to Ben. Did Ben make suggestions or?
so we did like an open casting call, for a majority of these people, and we knew that we were going to be shooting on the East Coast, so we kind of opened them up to like Maryland, which is where we did all of our principal photography, New York, Philly, Atlanta, and so a lot of the cast we actually just found just through open submissions, which was great. That's where we found Piper, Sam, who plays Chloe,
Yeah.
actually went to school with Ben and at NYU. But she was fantastic. She also just opened submitted and we're like, oh, hey, we know. Ben's like, I know her. So that's great.
She was
And
awesome. She was really, yeah, she reminded me, yeah, a lot of some younger, like Samara Weaving type of personality and presence for sure.
she was stunning. I really had a lot of fun working with her because I think her character in the film too is so like nuanced with
Hmm.
like her, going through like where do I belong and who do I fit in with. And I think what Sam really excels at is she expresses a lot of emotion without really needing to say anything. And
Just
that's
with her
such a
eyes,
hard
yeah.
thing to pull out of an actor, but she just did it so naturally. She's also an extremely talented writer and a photographer.
Oh,
So we actually shoot together frequently too. Very, very talented individual. But yeah, we found a lot of these people through open casting and submissions. I'd known Jason. I'd worked with him for years out here in Los Angeles, so that's kind of how I got that connection. He connected me with Fiona and some other kind of like more of our veteran actors since he's been in the game for a lot longer than I have, and so yeah, it was again just like a lot of like personal connections. Most of the crew were like that too. They were just people that I had been working with for years out
sure.
here. And I was like, hey, want to come out halfway across the country to come work on my movie for no money, please? And luckily everyone was great. They came out and worked hard and yeah, and did great.
Yeah, I find that more and more. It's always interesting to see the filmmaker mentality. If they've worked with you before or whatnot, and they liked working with you, sometimes it's a little easier to get them to come out and work with you than if you're fresh out of school and you're like, hey, you want to come? And you're like, who? I
Who are
yeah,
you?
you gotta pay me, buddy. But then if you get a good connection, then it's like, hey, you want to come out shoot this film? You're like, yeah, all right,
I'll take a couple weeks out.
I'll
Yeah,
take a couple weeks out, sure.
and that's why, like, my if you look at my IMDb, most of it is just like, what do you want to do? I see like camera credits in there. I see, producer, yeah, art department. You're like you're all over the place. And my mentality was like when I came out to LA, I wanted to just do everything. So I
Mm,
knew how everything worked and I knew like the ins and outs and what people needed to be successful in their own individual departments. And then through that, I just met so many great people. And you make those friendships and those connections that, I had, like our gaffer and our key grip, they are some of the most talented individuals that I know. And they usually work for a lot more than I was able to give them. But they came out, they hooked us up with like a great rental house, got us a great deal on equipment. So I was just able to use years of work and friendship to kind of like get to that point to be like, all right, here's my chance to kind of shoot my shot and just show
mm,
what I can do. And I think in general, that's what's really special to me about the movie too, is like for a lot of us, it was our first time,
sure.
getting the chance to show who we are. It was my directorial debut. Ben and Dylan, it was their first time as leads in a feature film, their first script that they had written. A lot of our principal younger cast, it was like their first leading roles in a film. And so it was cool to just be like, this is our first go. Let's see how well either we're gonna do really great or we're gonna crash and burn. And I
It,
guess it's easy, to see.
and I think it's great, BA, that you got involved in this project because I mean I imagine some veteran folks and that would look at this going, well, that's a young crew. Well, look at all this inexperience. Nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
But you got what was it? Was it the script or what was it kind of appealed to you, BA, besides just talking to Caleb? Was there other elements to this project that kind of drew you to it?
For me,
Uh, Caleb sold me on it.
Did he? Yeah.
Caleb seemed like a nut, so I knew I was going to be good company. Caleb, do you remember me reaching out and saying something stupid like, what is this scene and where does it go? Because if I didn't do that, then my modus operandi is generally sane.
I mean, I don't think so because
I don't think I did. Did
I
I?
think we pushed out the rough cut relatively quickly because
Fast, yeah, fast. Remember when we first turned over the rough cut? And the
yeah,
first text I got back was, holy fucking shit. Because, it's an assembly. Every assembly is awful. And actually, the assembly wasn't bad. It was just long. I think you and I only had what? We only had like two problem scenes. That was
yeah.
it. That was
Well, 'cause
it.
we were in a predicament where we left Maryland like the third week that we were there, and we actually had more shooting days that were lined up after that. But due to a series of, again, production, who would have thought about all these different things? We actually had to cancel production early there and come back to LA to finish because we just didn't have the resources that we need to pull off that finale in the way that we needed to. So we had like we finished wrapping at the end of October. So we had 2 months from like the end of shooting in Maryland to shooting the final scenes in Los Angeles. So it was pressure on Ben and I to be like, okay, we got to get an assembly cut, because we got to see like what do we still need to get, what's left over, what things do we need to fix, what part's 8-bit animation, what part isn't. And so yeah, I think within like 4 weeks,
Yeah, we did it fucking fast.
yeah, we
And
had
that's
like
why it was a little long, but it wasn't jumbled. It was a very well written script. There was very, very little fat. It was very efficient. It was exceedingly efficient. So, Mark, to answer your question, I think in our first discussion, somebody had brought up, it might have been Jason. I think Jason said something like, we're doing Scott Pilgrim, and then I said something like, you guys explained it to me, and I'm like, oh, so we're doing Bill and Ted meets the Goonies meets Scott Pilgrim. And then it clicked, and I'm like, all right, this is gonna be fucking rad. It was. I wasn't surprised at all. I was worried about, like I said, there was like two scenes only we were worried about, but man,
Sure.
I knew it was gonna be. Once that scene comes up with the gopher early on, right here. He's right here. It's out of focus.
Oh
Did you
yeah.
frame yours yet, Caleb?
the,
I
the
got
Honda
them.
Pro.
I got them all framed. I got a bunch. I got this one. I just redid my office, so these are all going up. But no, seriously, like I'm not kidding. I think Caleb nailed it. When we got into that opening sequence, I'm serious. I was certain that we were gonna have a good movie. I'm like, this will be fine. It's gonna take us a little bit long to get these editing schemes down, but and sound design I knew was gonna take some time, but
Sure. Sure.
I was and I'm gonna be honest with you, I've been doing this a long time. I think this is my 42nd feature. I've only been this confident on maybe like just a handful.
Sure.
Good job, Caleb. Thank you.
Good job, Caleb. What was also a great job is your use of VFX in here because we do have some animation and effects in here.
Oh God, just a
Huh?
couple.
Just
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 a
a
couple.
couple.
just a
Dude.
couple few, just a couple few in here, which looked really good. Yeah, did you have a VFX person in mind, or how'd you pick that? Because for an indie,
That's a story right there.
they looked really good.
They did. They did. All right. So the VFX story is real strange. So the original VFX designer was a guy named Steve Verdino. And literally, right before we were, no, wait, no, that's not really true. No, that is true because that was April. I think right as we were getting ready to start VFX, a literal fucking lightning bolt hit his house and burned the attic.
Oh my God.
Now Steve also did all the VFX
Sure.
on SATC and Hog, so I've mentioned him before. Here's the thing: don't worry about it. They completely rebuilt his house. It's fucking gorgeous. It's fine. So we have another colleague that used to work on Hasbro with Steve and I, named Andrew. And Caleb, I don't know if I've told you this story before, but here it goes. I probably have. So Jason goes, "All right, what are we gonna do?" And I'm like, "Don't worry about it. No problem. I got it." A guy named Andrew Ladone. He's terrific, but I got to tell you, he's never done a feature film before in terms of VFX.
Right.
Don't worry about it. If it doesn't work out, I got a plan B.
Okay.
Now here's the bad news. I didn't have a fucking
No
plan
plan
B.
B. Yeah.
I didn't have a plan C. I didn't have a plan D. I didn't have shit. But see, here's the thing. That's how good Andrew is. This was his first feature film gig. He's done a bunch of shorts,
Hmm.
but he's never had this level of workload ever.
Sure.
So
It was a lot.
really, really, all right. This my cat's got something to say. You go over there.
It,
So yeah, the VFX in this are they're nothing short of incredible.
there was a lot too. I mean,
Wow.
I think we were pushing close to like I want to say 100 shots in the film that had VFX, and so it was one of the longest parts of the process for us to really nail down and get it to work. But I think what ended up happening that was really again just another like kind of beautiful element of the film that worked out to its benefit was just having Andrew being the only artist who was working on the project. There's like a really solid level of consistency that
Hmm.
kind of follows because again like every piece that he was doing it was his hand, it was his artistry that was like signed on every shot. So when we were doing some of the powers and the orb stuff in the first act, we knew that the third act it was going to look just like that because he knew exactly how he did it. And so again, it was a process that I think took us like I want to say 8 to 9 months to kind of get through because so
Yeah.
many shots and regular calls. I was speaking to Andrew like 3 or 4 times a week, for a couple hours because this was all done remotely, because they're in Chicago and I'm out here in LA.
And when he started, I think we were still doing color, right? So we had color going almost in at least in the play in the beginning. In the
Yeah.
beginning, we did.
I think we colored the VFX scenes first so we could get him working
Yeah.
on it as soon as possible. And yeah, it really worked out. Like he's truly an amazing artist, and he brought a lot of really good creative ideas and ways to make things easier than I had originally envisioned. Because that was what he was really good at, was bringing me down in scale and being like, hey, if we don't go as big with what you're trying to do and keep it more simple and refined, it actually works better. It actually looks and feels a lot better. And he was totally right. Like the less distractions that you have on screen actually lead to a more convincing shot in a lot
Sure.
of ways. I'm not trying to do. I was sending him references from like Lord of the Rings and he was like, "Okay, Caleb, why don't you find me an independent film that had a look? Maybe don't give me a $1 billion franchise to try and build up."
That's true director fashion. You ask big and then you bring it down to, where you're gonna like it. But first you gotta ask for the big pie and just see what piece you can get out of it, right?
Exactly, exactly.
And what I liked about the effects too is they looked sharp. They looked great for an indie film, but also they felt a bit retro too, but good retro, not like cheap retro. They felt like they were still like when they do the hand thing in the third act there with the beams. I'm like, oh, that coloring and everything about it. I'm like, oh man, that's just ripped right out of cheesy 80s like sci-fi. So, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, they're perfectly fitting for this movie.
they are. They
They're
are.
not too extravagant,
Mhm.
but it's definitely far from simple. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely. And your makeup effects too. What the makeup effects that you had in here were really good and you used them. You know, I think sometimes working on a limited budget helps you use them efficiently rather than all over the place because it felt like that here because you don't have a huge amount of makeup effects, but where you do, they looked really good.
Yeah, yeah, and Rachel, who was like our head of makeup, was so stunning with that, her and her team, especially for like the finale where we have
Right.
like, this the lightning marks, the varicose veins embedded in Dougie's skin, and we have like
Hmm.
the scalding of Rebecca's character when half of her face is kind of melted off. Those were things that we were like so very specific with. And Rachel was what was great about Rachel was she never left anything kind of up to interpretation in the pre-production phase, like before we got out on the shoot day. She is so good at like providing me references and showing me exactly how something is going to look on the day, and then kind of how to elevate it a little bit further. So like having that, in mind. And what was great was I could show that to Andrew before we, really started
Right.
shooting sequences, and tell him like, hey, this is exactly what it's going to look like. So like wrap your brain around that, like how we're going to meld the VFX with some of these practical effects to make it feel like it's kind of seamless. And yeah, without that kind of like pre-production planning, and like what you're saying, we only had a couple moments of this. So it was kind of fun because we're like, okay, well, we had this set aside in the budget, so go big with this one. This is the one to go big on. So forget that bruise. Let's go big on the on the finale here.
Speaking of big, where did you find such a large sheet of dot candy? I want to.
That was tough. That was a very small order. I think when like we were Googling it and trying to find where like who would have it, like there were like 404 error pages because these like websites haven't existed for like 20 years. But I think I'm not actually sure who ended up finding it. But I know that we waited on that for a little bit. Like it had to get ordered in. It was a very special order. And then once it got in, we're like, all right, this is the only one we have. So nobody needs any of these. We need to stick them back on, get the glue gun in case any of these fall off. Um, but that part was so funny because even just in the wardrobe design and stuff, we were just thinking about how we can make these guys look even more lame and
Yeah.
dorky. So like, the Batman gauntlets that come out, I think that was a thrift store find that Ben's mom, who was our wardrobe designer, had found. And then that candy strip, it was just, yeah, all these like little things again that just came from like people just throwing out ideas, and I'm like, oh, I remember those are hilarious.
Well, that took me back to my child. I'm like, I used to eat those all the time, but at the same time, I'm like, where did you find them nowadays and one that big? So I was very impressed with that. And the fact those guys went in with Nerf guns, like you're sitting here going, what are you gonna do with Nerf gun? It's just, but it was fitting for their characters. And yeah, this film, another thing that I really appreciate about this is while it is a period piece of sorts, I mean, it's not set in a specific time frame, but at the same time, it does have a bit of the retro feel. Uh, you stayed away from the direct references of anything from the time period to where, oh, look at this is from this period exactly. Oh, look, here is retro Coke can. Here is retro, so was that kind of a conscious decision as well to take that approach of, yeah, we want to set it, give it this feel, but at the same time, we don't want to just slam it in your face like this is what we're doing.
Yeah, and it was, and what was funny is that so Ben and Dylan were both so very generous when it came to me coming back into the script and adding like my little pieces to it that I want. And as a writer, I love making pop culture references. It's one of my like favorite things to do when
Sure.
I'm writing little quips. And and they accepted a lot of the stuff that I put in there, but then that we had kind of all collectively agreed on that we didn't want to do exactly what you're saying. We didn't want to like really establish it because we want somebody who maybe was born in the 80s to connect with like what's happening, but also someone who's maybe born in the 90s and maybe
Right.
someone who grew up in the 2000s. We wanted to try and reach as many people with this, and we felt that the more that we assigned those specific references, like I had references to Alien, and we were like, this is almost two Stranger Things. We're kind of
Yeah.
getting into that territory there. So, it was hard for me a little bit. Because again, I love those kinds of like quippy little references, but again, I think it made the piece stronger in the end. And what's been fun about like getting some feedback from audiences who came and watched it, we did a special screening in Chicago, in McHenry at the old
Mhm.
drive-in theater that they had was that we had parents there with their kids who are probably like 10 years or younger.
Right.
The kiddos are enjoying it and they're having a lot of fun, but the parents are also saying like, "Oh, this reminds me of like my childhood too."
Hmm.
And so I think it's kind of, it
Here
kind
it
of,
is. That's the screening we did.
oh,
You
yep.
can't see
Oh,
it though.
It kind of hit this dual, it's hitting this demographic where we're kind of touching everybody in
sure.
kind of, so it worked out. I'm strong enough to admit that I was wrong and that those movies.
It works, and you get your idea across. I will say the Chloe character is a little bit more modern for the time period that it is with her with her attitude. That I was like, yeah, she's a little bit more of the today type of character. Looking at this, going, yeah, this is just kind of cheesy, but I'm gonna go along with it. But so yeah, but yeah, I think you've got a winner on your hands. It's a lot of fun. It's an interesting film. I enjoyed it quite a bit. You don't get too heavy, which I appreciate. You still have some heavy moments, like the conflict between Ben and Dylan, when you get that inevitable conflict between the friends, which it did feel natural here, actually. Which again, them being friends probably helps. But at the same time, you don't get too heavy with it. Was that something you kind of watched for too? So you're like, I gotta keep kind of this upbeat spirit to it.
Yeah, I think the most important thing about the movies that I think I used to like when I was young and that I used to connect with a lot more is when um, you know, when the stories and the messages were a little bit more simplified and they weren't so like because I think people get it. I think people relate to the situation without being beat over the
Right.
head with what's happening because I think it opens up more for them to assign, what's maybe happened in their life if I don't spend so much time, being melodramatic over a situation like, the potential ending of a friendship, because I think everyone's experienced that. So I always wanted to like, I wanted to make sure that we touched on it so it felt real and it felt like the stakes were kind of there, because I think the film is so goofy and wacky and yeah, like what you said, they're running around with Nerf guns and stuff. Like the level of danger that they're physically in, I think is never truly life and death. It is always kind of on that more playful, kind of fun end, but the emotional side of their story, of their friendship,
Right.
is kind of something that is a little bit more life and death. And so I wanted to kind of take that approach where it's like I still made sure that we were focusing on their dynamic and their relationship without being melodramatic about it. Dancing about how I lost my best friend, and I just wanted it to feel real. And
Yeah.
and again, going even back to just like what I learned through this whole process is like simplifying things tends to make them more successful at communicating the message, whether that's the VFX, whether that's like the editing, whether that's the acting, whether that's the storytelling. Um, I think a lot of films that I see now when I go to the theaters is I think we're trying to tell this really complex emotional
Right.
story. Sometimes it works great. Like there's films that definitely, hit that on the head, but I think a lot of films are kind of missing the mark in that sense because they're trying to tell too much in not a successful way. So I wanted to tell something relatable, but as simply as I could, while there's still this fun, wacky adventure kind of going on in the background.
Yeah, and keeping it a little lean makes BA's job easier, right? Because you don't have as much footage to go
Yeah,
through.
right. That's
Uh,
right.
You're not wrong. No,
I,
you're not wrong.
I appreciated the runtime, by the way, gentlemen, both of you, quite a bit because I think, and I've had this conversation with some of my friends, and on our podcast, The Spoiler Room, we cover a lot of films from all different eras. And like last year, we covered pre-code films. And my crew, my fellow hosts on the show, a lot of them, they were films that they hadn't seen before, and they're like, holy crap. He's like, what are people talking about with classic films either being boring or whatnot, or not looking at it? It's like they tell a lean and mean story in a short amount, because film was very expensive back then, but their stories are, there's very little fat usually, yet they cover a lot of ground in very little time. time.
Yeah.
You know, and
It was
I think digital, no offense, because I'm sure it helps indie filmmakers. On one hand, you save money because digital. On the other hand, in Hollywood, I think it's made Hollywood a little lazy.
Yeah.
I honestly do. I think they think, oh, it's digital. We don't have to spend as much on film, and we can edit literally up until the week before we filmed, before we release the movie,
the day of.
day of. Yeah, we could shoot all this and we could throw this in here. It doesn't. Whereas I think like where we grew up and the period that this film takes place in, um, they were on tighter budgets, so they had to tell a leaner story. So you had to be careful too on what you shoot, like you guys did during an indie film, because you only have so much time and so much money. So you got to be careful with what you're shooting versus, we could just shoot like 50 days and then we'll just trim it down.
Yeah, and that was like I think one of the fun parts of like the editing process with Ben is like once we got like our meat and potatoes of, the rough cut and the assembly, we were like I almost 2 hours, a little bit over. We had a lot to cut from it. And we really started going in with a hatchet and like even line by line being like, do we need that line? Can we cut it?
Yeah.
Can we cut around it? And
Yeah.
again, another beautiful part of the story that I think works for it is that it does move so quick. Like we're never really in a scene for more than like two
Mm-hmm.
minutes at a time, which I think helps audiences, even now, just be like, oh, okay, that we saw that. Now we're on to the next thing. It just feels like you are really moving through it. And it helped me as a writer, especially to ask myself that same question, like every piece of dialogue that I'm writing, every line, do I really need it to communicate what's happening here? Like this 3-minute banter, does it really benefit something? Because if I lose someone in that, 2 minutes that it takes for these characters to have this conversation that maybe I like, I'm gonna lose them for the rest of the film. So Ben and I literally did that for the whole film. We just stopped being like, do we need that? Yeah, we need that. Okay, we'll keep that. And then, and then if we didn't need it, we would chop it
Yep.
away and then we're like, okay, now how do we cut around this? Because now we got a jump cut. So do we go to a reaction? Do we find another B-roll shot? And yeah, it wasn't something that I loved initially when, I was told I had to trim it down because I was like, no, my poor baby, every shot is an important thing.
and I don't think BA's not heard that before,
Right.
right?
Oh, for sure. Well, that's a function of the writing too. If the
Yeah.
writing's efficient, generally the edit will be or the pacing will be efficient.
Mhm.
And I think the only like I said, Caleb and I only struggled with just no, I don't even think a handful, like two. But generally there was only maybe what I would say maybe six scenes that had fat. And I think that assembly went long too because we had really no understanding of A, the video game pieces yet, and B, the effects.
Mhm.
So
We had a lot of
I think
placeholder.
trimming it down actually was really it really wasn't that difficult. Fortunately, you're right. We got into assembly quickly.
Mhm.
Mark, did Caleb tell you that the movie was shot in two phases? There was a break,
Oh,
which
did you?
actually benefited us a lot. Yeah, there was a Caleb. What was the schedule? It was fall and then the next January, right?
Yeah, so it was October. We shot for 3.5 weeks in Maryland. And then we took like that month and a half, 2 months off to then transition to LA, which is where we did the Goth house family. We did the final fight sequence. We did the exterior levitation scene out there. That was all like kind of captured in LA because we needed complex stunt rigging and stuff
Sure.
like that. So we kind of had to come back to some some friends that I had who were very generous and gave me a great deal. But yeah, it helped us like very much go through and be like, oh, we need this. We need to go back and maybe pick up this kind of shot here. We'll fake it some here, somewhere in here. And then also helped me just as a director to be like, okay, like keep it moving, like let's do that take again, but let's do it 10% faster, let's speed it up a little bit.
We only
So
needed like I don't even think it was three, four individual pickups, like literal pickup shots.
yeah.
That's all that was missing, right?
Yeah, there were 2 days in my garage. Uh,
If I had a dollar for every time I heard an indie filmmaker go, well, there were from pickup seeds in my garage. I love it. I love it.
Did it on Hog. Everybody does it. But seriously, that's what a well-oiled machine Gothic Slayers was.
Sure.
Yeah, I think you guys only did like literally four individual shots, and then the
yeah,
movie was, with the exception of VFX, the movie was good to go.
yeah.
That's
Couple
awesome.
couple sexy chest shots, I think, if I
Sexy
remember
chest
correctly.
But there
shots.
was it was Jason's chest in my garage, and then it was also I was playing Dylan when he was in the cult dungeon with the
Mhm.
rune painter. So
Yeah.
it was my chest that the rune painter was painting on. So I had to be his body double for that, and the only person who could help me with like the stand-in for the hand with the brush was my mother who was visiting me over Christmas. So it's my mother's hand with this like red paint, pretending to like mark me.
Oh man, that's great.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
That's
it is.
Real life.
beautiful.
The magic of movie making, right?
It is, it is indeed the magic of movie making, and you have a fun just a fun film here that I hope it has continued success online. Are you looking at doing physical release of it at any time, or?
Yep, yep. We are currently in the process of that. We're actually doing our box art and stuff this week, and it's going to be cool because there's going to be some extra bonus features. We have a gag reel that's going to be included in that.
Nice.
Have an audio commentary, and then we'll also have a physical copy of the music video that accompanied the
Sweet.
film. So my friend Sudo, who sings the hero song at the end of the film Goblin, we went out and when we were doing the sound design. We shot at a mini golf course here nearby, and we shot a
Nice.
music video for that song. So it was a lot of fun. So there's going to be some cool stuff on there, a little bit of extra bonus features there. So make sure to send you one.
Oh,
So
I
you're,
would that would
you're
be
welcome.
awesome. I would appreciate that. I'm like, yeah, I need another. I've got space on my shelf yet a little bit. I had to move some VHS. I had to move some VHS off the back, so I got room. So I got to fill those holes in for sure.
And
Uh,
Mark, I sent you a link to that music video. It's really good.
awesome, thank you. I'll include that in the body of this interview. And final question is, we'll start with you, BA. Favorite video game? You got one?
Um, shit, that's like favorite movie. Uh, how about this? Let's go with most influential video game.
Okay, that'll work.
This is before Nintendo Power.
Sure.
That's how fucking old I am.
Hey, I
I
relate. I relate.
I spent the entire summer of 1986,
Mhm.
which was incidentally the summer of Cobra.
So, Summer of Cobra, absolutely.
Summer of Cobra, my favorite movie. That's not actually true. It's one
The,
of them. I spent the entire summer mastering Metroid. That would be my answer.
oh,
Nice, good
yeah,
choice. Yep.
that's an excellent choice. I actually played that recently, and the one that they released for the Switch just recently, which was a side scroller, was fantastic as well. All the Metroid
Yeah, is it?
games. Yeah, the Metroid Dread is just fantastic. But yeah, the original Metroid, I've spent many an hour on that one.
Yeah.
Especially like you said, before Nintendo Power or the
Yep.
unauthorized video games, which kids back in the day we had to go to the bookstore or library and look at the unauthorized guide to the video game for you because you didn't have the internet to where you could go secrets in Metroid. No, no, no. You had to go, wait, how many blocks over do I shoot for the extra energy tank? What? Huh? What?
That's right.
And so
Metroid is notorious for that too, especially
yeah.
Metroid 2. Good Lord. How was anyone supposed to beat that game
You
without a
you
guide?
you spent
Like,
hours
like
just,
three and a half months.
you spent hours just running across the same board shooting every brick just to see
Yeah.
what do I do? And then you got to bomb and then you got to like yeah, so no, Metroid's an awesome the original Metroid is still yeah, that's near and dear to me. What about
Wait.
you, Caleb? Most influential video game.
This one definitely this is more of a modern
That's
take.
okay.
And it actually prepared me for the film industry really well. It's called Dark Souls.
I know Dark Souls. Yeah,
Dark
I've
Souls.
sworn many times at Dark Souls. I didn't throw my controller because it was too expensive. Dark Souls, yes. I know Dark
I
Souls.
So a game that just constantly beats me down time and time again, really unforgiving, but you find the strength to get back up, try again, and eventually when you beat the boss and you beat the game, you feel like I've done something with my life. Um, Now, I'm still waiting for
Accomplish something
that
with your
part
life.
of the game. I'm if in real life. I'm still waiting for that. But when I do, it's going to be very special, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
So you picked up Elden Ring then as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
Elden Ring, big, big fan. And
Yeah.
my wife watches me play it. She's like, I don't know why you do this to yourself. Like, I don't know.
Hey, you really want to challenge? Dust off or get a Super Nintendo and then try to play Super Star Wars or Super Empire Strikes Back with no checkpoints, no save points.
Yeah,
And those
impossible. Yeah.
games, the Super Star Wars games, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Those games literally made me angry because you would get so far and you'd die and you'd have to start all over again. And you're
Those-
just,
The true masochists, that's
Yeah.
like the true
True
masochist,
sadist. Yeah.
like video game.
well, that's, video game players are crazy. You do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And eventually you might get it. And then that just keeps you motivated for the next one, right?
Right, that's
Well,
exactly.
I hope you're motivated to do another feature like this, Caleb, because it was great. And, uh, Ben, always great to talk to you as well, sir. So,
Absolutely.
where could they keep up with what you're working on next? We'll start with you, Caleb. You got links, or where could they keep up with your next project?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram. That's the best way to kind of keep up with what I'm doing next. My Instagram is at Caleb Harris, Calub. You'll see a silver fox, and that's me with my gray hair. That's what I call myself. I also have a page for my company, Junction Lads Productions. You can just Google that. And all of our upcoming projects will be housed there. We have a documentary that's going to be coming out here pretty soon, and hopefully a couple more narrative projects. So,
Fantastic. And BA, what about you, sir? It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And yeah, you're becoming just a regular here. So,
Yeah,
but
I'm a regular.
where could they follow you?
You know what? I'm off social media, so
Good call. Good
heck,
smoke
call.
signals, maybe. I can be
a
reached.
courier pigeon. Do you have a courier
Yeah,
pigeon?
career pigeons. I can be reached at
Morse
ben
code.
dot ben.lewandowski@gmail.com.
Oh, there you go. I don't blame you
I'm keeping
for
it real simple this year.
I don't blame you for purging the social media. I think we all need a break from that. So, but yes, folks, check it out. It's on Amazon. It doesn't cost a lot to rent. It is worth renting. It is very entertaining. I appreciate talking to you both as always. And yeah, folks, support indie cinema so we could get just fun movies like this that don't have a long runtime and still tell a great story. So, thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
Mark.
much for having me.